Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Blender and Unity Crash Course. This episode we're actually going to be starting a game object prop, so I don't know if we'll completely finish it. I've got a lot to cover in this one, so we'll probably be moving a little bit quicker than usual. Alright, so what I want to do is make something very generic. I want to make a crate. And this crate is going to be a nice game asset that's going to have level of detail system, very easy to make in Blender. We'll have it interactable, like we'll have our player be able to maybe smash it. And maybe it'll drop a little coin. So, that being said, there's going to be a lot more technicalities in this one, so I'll try and explain as much as I possibly can. Let's go. So, starting out, we can just actually use this cube. This is perfectly fine, so let's jump into edit mode. Let's press Shift A. Let's add a new cube, and what I want to do is kind of make like a cage around this thing. So let's bring this one up, shrink it down, maybe scale it on the Y. Maybe it's a little bit thick. Scale on the Y a little bit more again. GX, I want to move it down right into this corner spot right here. So instead of actually just duplicating this on all four corners and trying to be perfect like that, we can just we can separate this and add a modifier to it. So a modifier is going to affect the mesh that you have selected. So say I don't want to affect this cube here, but I want to affect this block. So what you can do is you can separate this object by pressing P. So that'll separate whatever you have selected from the current mesh and make it its own object in this hierarchy here. P, separate by selection. So that'll separate your selection. Now go back into object mode, and we have this this separate piece here. So go back into edit mode. We can do this in edit mode or object mode. Add a mirror modifier. So what that's going to do initially is mirror it on the X, and that's perfectly fine. I also want to mirror it on the Z. I only have to edit one of these, and it'll edit all four. So if you want everything to be exactly the same, that's what you'll do. What we can do from here is we can just duplicate this object, right? Remove the mirror that way. Go into edit mode. This 3D cursor is a pivot point that we can use. So obviously this is a perfect square around that 3D cursor. So if I hold Shift and right click somewhere in the scene, this is a pivot point that we can use up here, just like median point, individual origin, stuff like that. So we can go down to 3D cursor, and that's going to cause this to pivot off of this. So if I rotate it now, it's going to rotate as if this is the center of mass, right? Rather than using median point or the origin of the object, which is this little orange dot. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So if you have moved your 3D cursor, you can hit Shift S. You can move it back to the world origin right here. So that'll put it right back in the center of the X and Y axis. Now, you can also, another useful one is selection to cursor. So if I hit selection to cursor without keep offset, it's going to cause all the vertices to collapse into one little dot right there. Control Z to undo that. Shift S, if I hit keep offset, it's going to keep the object the same as the way it is, and it's going to move the center of mass to the 3D cursor. That's useful as well. Shift S, we're going to go back to cursor to world origin. Put it right in the, sorry, I'm going to undo first. Cursor to world origin, so it's right there. I need to go to the side view. So you can press 3 on your number pad, or you can come over here to view, viewpoint, and change it to the side there, so left or right. So what I want to do is rotate 90 degrees, okay? It's going to drop it right down to the side there. This is perfect. So now I want to change this back to median point, because if I scale, it's going to want to shrink itself into the 3D cursor, right? So if I want to change this back to median point and just shrink itself. Good. Move this on the Y-axis a little bit. Try and keep this kind of square, I guess. Yeah, I think that's good. So we can also mirror this one. We want to mirror it on the Y, and I think the X as well. Yeah, so we'll do X and Y. That gives us all four corners. Beautiful. We can do the same thing again. Click this object here. Shift D to duplicate it. Remove what you have mirrored so far, just the axes. And I guess we'll go back to the 3D cursor here. You can hit 7 to go to the top. I want to go R90. Okay, put it over there. So you can see your axes here, Y and X, so we want to mirror this on the Y, so we're just going to click Y. We also want to mirror it up and down, so that's the Z. Boom. Now I can shrink this. You can see what happens. Whoops, I'm still in the 3D cursor pivot point, right? So it's going to shrink into the 3D cursor. We don't want that. We want to shrink the object by itself. Okay, so we'll shrink that like that a little bit. We'll move it in on the Y a touch. All right, I think looking good. If you hit Alt-S, that will scale things on their normals. So basically what that means is what I mentioned before. So all the directions of these faces, it's gonna shrink outward and inward. That's a lot easier to explain with something like a cylinder or another kind of shape, but I hope that makes sense. We'll probably use it again later so that you can better understand. I think we can move this one down. Actually, you can select multiple objects in object mode and then hit Tab to go to edit mode, and we can select multiple. Whoops. So obviously, we only need to move 2 of these, which is awesome. Just going to bring this down so that it's not so crazy. As you can see on the sides, it's only this thick, so that's what I'd like to have it right here as well. So I'm just going to come down a little bit right there. Good. And the other thing we could have done is just extend it on the sides, but this is fine. So I want some cross parts here, so I just want to add a new cube, I think. Shift-A, add a cube. Okay, edit mode. You can see it's starting, the list is starting to get pretty big, but we're going to connect all these together at the end. SC. Let's scale this on the Y, make it kind of like a plank, right? Doesn't need to be that thick. Shift. Or G and Z, move it up a little bit. Now I think we need to extend it on the X a little bit first, so let's do that. Now we can hit R, Z, and that's just going to flip it on the Z axis, 45 degrees. Beautiful. Now I can shrink it down a touch. Just want that extending to about there, I guess. We can hit G and Z and move it down a touch. Perfect, as long as they're not on the exact same plane, all is well. All right, so we can actually mirror this one on the Z axis as well, so we can put it on the bottom. So we don't want it on the X, we want it on the Z. Beautiful. Next, we can actually just, we can duplicate this again, right? Remove it on the Z, adding another cube here. Go into edit mode, change this back to the 3D cursor, R90, that's gonna put it on the side. Perfect. And we can move this out a little bit where the sides are kind of thicker. Next, I wanna go mirror this one on the X, perfect. I also want to duplicate this one more time and do the other side. So Shift D, move it off the X. 7, R, 90, perfect. I think that's good, but we'll move it in a tiny bit on the Y. Good. Mirror this on the Y. Okay, and there we have it. Okay, so now what we have is a bunch of different pieces here that are being mirrored on certain axes. What we want to do is unwrap these first. So when like I said, we only need to edit one. We can also just unwrap one and it will properly unwrap the rest. So we're going to start UV unwrapping now. This cube by itself is probably perfectly fine. I think I want to select all of these. Yes, everything but the original cube. You can go into edit mode and edit multiple meshes here. So you can see that we only need a few of these to unwrap. We don't have to unwrap the whole thing. It's very convenient with the mirror modifier here. So we're going to go UV editing. Okay, so I think the best thing to do would just be actually select the inside lines here. So on a seam, you're actually going to, your texture is going to be cut there. Yeah, so as long as we put the seams down there, they will hide. Now, that being said, on the prop itself, this is not going to be visible, but the seam I'm talking about, but when we break it, it possibly will be, so. Okay, I'm just going to keep selecting inside corners like this. Okay, and you can see, I can't see anything I have selected in solid view, which is perfect. Back into wireframe, and I hit Control E and mark a seam. Okay, now the last thing we need to do is select these outer faces that we would delete on our prop asset. We'll get to that. Okay, so just select all the faces that are on the ends of each piece of wood. Control E, mark seam. All right, so we can go individually on each one now and just check. Perfect. Okay, we need that inside line. You can see there, Control E, mark seam, perfect. Come down to this one. Good. This one. Excuse me. Okay. Good. This one here, perfect. One here. Good. So we can select all these now. Go into edit mode, A to select everything, U, unwrap. So that's going to give us a nice unwrap that we can lay this next to. Say if I have a texture here with some planks, we can lay this right over the plank and it's going to fit pretty nice. Now I'm going to head to textures.com. I highly recommend you sign up. It's free. You get 15 free textures a day. Nothing I do is sponsored. I'm just mentioning this is a great site. It's all free. It's CGI, professional photo scan textures, they're fantastic. So highly recommend textures.com. Okay, so I'm actually going to choose this one, plank wall 2x2. Okay, so we're going to, what you want is we're going to take the albedo, which is the base color, also known as diffuse. We're going to take the normal map, which is a bump map. As you can see here, it's actually going to add the look of geometry without actually adding geometry. So it's a very optimal way to add detail. We can take the ambient occlusion map, and what this is going to do is add a little bit darker shadows than Unity would originally. Right? So all these black lines, they're going to be a little bit darker on the texture, and that's fantastic. I'm going to take that. So go into shading. Now here we have our original material, right? Materials tab, there it is. Right, Shift A, texture, image texture, click. We're going to open, go to my desktop, where's Crash Course Textures, perfect. And we'll grab this one, this will be our base color. Okay, so not bad. We'll fix all that. We'll also add the normal map. So we can go Shift A, texture, image texture. Okay, now when you connect, let's open it up. When you connect these, it's not going to work properly right away. This needs a middleman. It needs kind of a mixer. So what we're going to add is a node called normal map. You can hit, what is it? Yeah, so when you hit Shift A, you can also just search for something. So we're going to search for a node called normal map. Click that, and when you hover over a connection, it'll highlight, and you can drop it in, and it'll connect itself properly there. Now the last thing to note about normal maps is it's using these shades of blue, red, and green, purple, stuff like that. It's not actually a color texture that we want to use. We want to change this to non-color because the data within is for bump. It's not for color. So here we go. We can change the strength of this and see what's going on. You see that? Wonderful. And we don't actually have to sculpt anything or do anything crazy like that. It's just going to add a cool effect right away.